I did not invent the term shrinking cities. This was invented by a German architect, Philipp Oswald, in the mid-2000s, around 2005. But I found the term very apt, and it linked to a phenomenon that I've been researching for a long time, ever since I arrived at MIT in the late 90s, which was cities that are losing population, they're losing their housing stock, they're in deep, deep economic trouble, they have a lot of social problems, and they're extraordinary built environments. You could say problematic, you could also say they're spectacular in a certain way. This vista of a city that is experiencing dramatic decline. We thought of these places as declining cities, but we soon came to think of them as shrinking cities. So I made shrinking cities in the United States the focus of my research for several years, focusing particularly on Detroit as a paradigm, the largest city in the United States that has been continually shrinking for decades, but also other cities like Philadelphia, Cleveland, Buffalo, and Baltimore, some places where I taught urban design studios at MIT. Design After Decline is based on empirical research that I undertook looking at, quite simply, the strategies that Detroit and Philadelphia, which I selected out of a larger range of shrinking cities in the United States, I simply wanted to look at what they were doing. I had no preconceptions about what they were doing. I wanted to go in, observe, record, and analyze, which I did. I found that these cities were engaging in a variety of strategies. It turned out that Detroit and Philadelphia, in fact, quite different places physically, if you look at them as a vernacular built environment, were engaging in quite different strategies in terms of their rebuilding, and yet these strategies also had some commonalities. So the book centers around this paradox of difference and commonality in rebuilding strategies in these declining cities. Now, it turns out that the differences link to ideas that planning theorists, particularly international development specialists, have had for a long time, which has to do with the different roles of the state and the market in development or the rebuilding of cities. And I happened to find, it was in a sense a lucky finding, that these two cities differed. Detroit was very dependent on a developer-driven, private market-led approach. They let developers decide what to do. The state, really city government, stepped in, assisted. They did what developers wanted, more or less. Philadelphia had a state-led approach. It's actually more unusual. The state-led approach said, we're going to generate a plan. This motivation is coming from the top, the mayor of the city, who empowers a city official to go out, investigate the situation, and then use existing public funds to do what the public sector thought was best, which was to build social housing. In Detroit, the city built middle-class housing. So there were some differences in the income level, types, policies that shaped the housing. Then as an architect, when I looked at the housing, I found a very interesting finding, which was both cities were suburbanizing. So instead of building within the vernacular housing types that they had been bequeathed by the past, they were both, in a sense, imitating suburban houses. In Detroit's case, very literally, it was literally suburban builders building standard suburban models. Philadelphia, they were building detached houses in a city that's composed about 70 or 80% of row houses. So my question was, and a lot of the book centered around this, why is this so? What is motivating these places to copy the suburbs? And what does this mean? If our shrinking cities are suburbanizing, de-densifying, copying suburban areas, what does this mean for the urban design of these places? And in particular, what kind of built environment are these places becoming? Because as you go back and look at the urban design ideals and paradigms that we possess, these shrinking cities are a new kind of urban environment, a new kind of urban design. No one knows what they are. This is the big puzzle. They're a new phenomenon because we've never had large industrial cities before in history, and we've never had large industrial cities declining. This is what we looked at in the book.